other thing right now that seems overwhelming to me is like, how do you pick all these people that are on your team? Like, how do you find property managers, especially if you're thinking about investing in multiple states? And
Hmm.
I'm certainly not, I'm not super tied to Oklahoma. It's just what I'm
Hmm.
most familiar with. Uh, but property managers and contractors and insurance, I mean, all the things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, because essentially you're asking, how do I build my team without having relationships in a market?
Right.
All right, it's very doable. So think about it this way: once you pick your market, you just need to find some watering holes, like the places that people hang out. And because of how technology has proliferated through all of our lives, that makes it a lot simpler. So a lot of those types of groups are going to be Facebook groups. I use Facebook more today than I ever have in the past. And it's all real estate stuff. It's all connecting with contractors or people in my market, or others that are interested in real estate investing. But it's less about, seeing my old friend's new cat picture, or, whatever.
Right.
So using those, finding those groups that are your specific to your market, that are real estate focused. Even if it were, let's say it's specific to your market, but it's contractor connection is the type of, or the name of the group. That's great. You can get some information out of there. But what I like to do is, you can interview a bunch of people. In fact, in the building your team section, I give you a list of interview questions for contractors and property managers. There's 45 or 50 questions on each, and it's not designed for you to go through and interview every single question. It's so that you have all of the questions at hand, and you've at least got options, instead of walking into a call and being like, hi, what do you do? You can pick the
Right.
ones that you say, this is actually really important. And those are pretty self-explanatory. Like, what's your rate? What happens if things go badly between us? Will you hand off to a new property manager, and things like that? But I don't want to get to the interview until I'm reasonably sure that they're reliable, right? I want to pick between three. I want to have probably three interviews, and I want to pick the best of three good ones, not the only one that
That showed up.
is okay. You know what I mean? So what I do there is I just ask for referrals. So I'll post on a group and say, hey, other investors, who have you used for your property manager that you really like? Right. In fact, somebody asked this recently in our Abilene group, and they got 9 different comments. Now, this is going to vary by your market, right? Some market groups are really active. Some market groups aren't very active. And so that's something to consider. If you don't get any responses to that, you can find people that have been active. And just because of the way that Facebook provides information to you, those people might not have seen your post. So I would go and I'd message them and say, hey, I saw you're pretty active in this market. Who do you use for property management? And who have you had a good experience with? And ask them that. Because then if you're asking, you're going to get people that are going to answer that post and say, I do contractor work, or I do property management work. Call me, use me, love me. Right. And that's fine. They should be doing that, advocating for their own business. But what's more valuable is having an investor that says, I'm doing what you're doing, and I've had a good experience with them. Right. So they've essentially curated in the past everything that's happened in the past. Right. So they've said, I've used them for this and it's worked out. That doesn't guarantee you that down the road it's not going to go wrong, but it at least protects you. Right. Because what's the best way to assess somebody's trustworthiness? Their previous actions. All right. So and that's really one of the main things you're looking for is, are they trustworthy? Like, what's their intention and what's their competence? So trusting somebody is made up of those two things, their intention and their competence. A good example of this would be, my brother. He's my best friend. I would not let him operate on my brain. Right? He doesn't know anything about brain surgery. Right? What he does know about electrical engineering, I mean, he's sharp at so many different things. Right? I'd let him be a parent to my child if I died, but I would not let him operate on my brain. Right? In the same respect, there are people that are really, really good at brain surgery, but they're terrible people. Right? And I don't want them to operate on my brain either. So you need those two pieces in order to find somebody that's really going to be advocating for you and your business. And the best way to do that is get it curated from somebody else. So you end up with, 3 or 4 of them, connect with them, interview them, and then you got a good one. All right. So the finding a good property manager is going to be easier than finding a good contractor. particularly because skilled labor is short nationwide right now. I mean, you think historically, like we've been telling for 20 years, we've been telling everybody college is the answer. You have to go to college. That's the only way. And then you get a good job and then you work for 50 years and then you die. Right. And the reality is that like skilled labor is incredibly valuable and we need more of it. And there's not as many people doing skilled labor. And so with more type of contractor work, if you've only got a few contractor organizations, right, that they get booked up really quickly, right? And you could be 6 months out. The luxury that we've got with our economy is we reward people that are going to take risks and open into like new sectors like that, right? So if there's only 3 groups, somebody as a part of one of those who's working for the man might say, "Let me just start my own gig." Like we're making so much money, but I'm only getting paid $15 an hour. I'm going to start this new group, right? And it helps level out the entire market. So that's how I evaluate and find those people.
Okay.
You're going to have in the building your team section, I go through probably about 15 roles that are going to be on your team, but really 3 are important. So you've got your property manager, your agent, and your contractor. All right. So when you're analyzing deals, you want to validate your numbers before you purchase the deal. When I say validate your numbers, like I mean, once you purchase the property, that price isn't going to change. But then there are 3 other numbers that are going to change, right? How much can you rent it for is one. How much is rehab going to cost is another. And what's it going to appraise for after I fix it up, right? If we're using the BRRRR method. You want to ask an expert those numbers. You'll get better at estimating them, but you're never going to be the expert anyway, right? The expert for estimating rehab costs is going to be a contractor, right? Because they do that all the time. They're the one literally telling you, I will fix this for this amount of money, right? And that's going to be dynamic as inflation changes, as supply chain issues change, as lumber prices go all over the place. They're going to know the actual price right now, right? So that's your expert for rehab. Your expert for rent is going to be your property manager, because their sole job as a property manager is to put butts in seats, right? To get people renting out properties for investors. And so all they're doing all the time is getting properties ready to be rented and then getting people in those properties, right? So they are the ones that know what you can rent things for, all right? So they're going to be your answer there, all right? And then the last one is your agent. Your agent is going to be the one that's telling you what something's going to appraise for down the road, right? So they're going to say, this is what it would sell for in this market, because that's their full time, right? Just like if someone were to ask you, Laura, you mentioned you're a principal in education, right? If someone was going to ask you about educational development models, right? You're the expert there, right? Or about how to, administration in education, you're the expert there, right? In the same way, that's what we want to use for our team. So those 3 people, don't focus on 15 people in your team, just focus on those 3 people. Because the other people in your team are kind of like an insurance agent, right? You can find that all over the place. And the price will be a little bit different, but it's not orders of magnitude different. It's like, maybe $10 different, $20 a month different, right? Yeah. Same with title companies and things like that. Like you'll be able to find them. They're a dime a dozen. They're all over the place. The most important ones are those 3.
Got it.